He is reincarnated into a new world, confronts the main player, and dies. Now, he must take revenge. Stay tuned. The day began in a tranquil hush, as morning light poured through an open window and caused the sheer white curtains to dance on a gentle breeze. In the quiet stillness of his room, Korenlok awoke to the serene glow of the morning sun, sitting up in bed with a pensive air. That momentary calm shattered as a surge of unknown power caused his eye to ignite with a fierce crimson light, a stark exclamation mark blazing within the iris. The story begins high above a sun-drenched metropolis, where a pensive young man named Korenlok stood before a window, his fist clenched as he grappled with a profound question about his own identity. The nightmare began with a horrifying realization, sweat beading on Korenlok's face as he questioned whether he was somehow trapped inside the very game he used to play. The story hurtles back in time to 3 years ago, to the moment when everything began to unravel. It all started the moment he awoke inside a violent video game, the world itself glitching into a digital void from which the title Heroic Legends of Arhan materialized before his eyes. The story was known as Heroic Legends of Arhan, a tale defined by the turbulent events of its academy, where a powerful sorceress and her roaring creature were engulfed in a maelstrom of crimson energy. After an endless series of dangerous incidents plagued the world, a final, catastrophic event began as a monstrous horned creature rose from the earth against a sky ablaze with destruction. The story opens upon a world-ending apocalypse of an unimaginable scale, unleashing a grotesque horde of monsters that threatens the very fate of existence. With a carefree grin, a young man named Korenlok dismissed the problem entirely, declaring that it was of no concern to him since the main player would take care of it. It all began with the simple, damning fact that Korenlok was created to be an expendable NPC, a mere footnote in a hero's introductory quest to save the villagers. Reaching out in the bustling market, Koren marveled at how lifelike everyone appeared, a seamless illusion the game was programmed to maintain only as long as the story proceeded as intended. Standing amidst the village crowd, Korenlok wore a knowing smirk as he declared his intention to find the main player, a man named Sihu Park, destined for immense riches and fame. His confidence, however, immediately shattered as he struggled to recall the starting point, while a nearby Jägerhinspeter seethed with frustration, muttering about his own stupid specs. As the world blurred around him, Korenlok's mind seized on the unfamiliar word, questioning the existence of specs in a game that had no such item until a startling possibility began to dawn. This new understanding solidified into a cold resolve, and as a single purple eye ignited from behind his hand, he vowed to live from now on only for himself and for absolute efficiency. The moment shattered with the sharp sound of a slap, as two hands from different worlds collided in a brilliant flash of energy. A shocking revelation hung in the air between them as Korenlok excitedly grabbed Jägerhinspeter's hand, confirming they shared the same incredible secret: they were both from Earth, just like Sihu Park. As the monstrous beast roared in defiance, Koren descended upon it in a flurry of violent slashes, his mind consumed by the one crucial difference that separated them. That crucial difference allowed him to land with a decisive thud upon the creature's fallen body, the swirling debris, a testament to the special privilege he wielded as the main player. Before a glowing holographic screen displaying a list of attributes, the soldier Korenlok stood utterly perplexed, wondering what purpose they could possibly serve in a game he had never even played. Slinging a friendly arm around Korenlok, Lark Bergman leaned in to share vital secrets, stressing the importance of raising his intelligence for the mage class and warning him about an upcoming crucial skill book. In a world of branching paths and uncertain futures, a man named Korenlok stood apart. The one who had walked every route, seen every ending, and now confidently declared that they should leave everything to him. This absolute certainty stemmed from his hidden past as a titanium core player of Heroic Legends of Arhan, a secret that held invaluable knowledge he could now offer to Sihu. His eyes flared with a cunning red light as a smirk crept across his face, recognizing that this situation would grant him an incomparable advantage. With a sudden whoosh and a ferocious bark, a massive dog-like creature erupted from a crimson aura, its intimidating presence earning a triumphant thumbs up from a grinning Koren. The quiet tension of the forest abruptly shattered as Korenlok and Jägerhinspeter were struck by a shared, shocking realization. Bound by glowing purple chains within a pulsating magical circle, Korenlok defiantly raised his staff against the looming, wolf-like silhouette whose red eyes promised a brutal end. As a concerned voice called out to him, Korenlok simply looked over his shoulder, a confident smirk on his face while dark, wispy energy coiled ominously around his body. Twirling with an explosive burst of energy that sent his long hair flying, Koren gratefully acknowledged his companion's aid and roared for them to charge forward. With the overwhelming presence of his empowered, ethereal self looming behind him, Korenlok cleaved through the darkness, unleashing a devastating slash from his glowing scythe upon a shadowy foe. The immense power of his strike was a direct result of his conviction, knowing that his own strategic knowledge combined with Sihu's unique abilities as the main player would ensure their victory. Atop a mound of vanquished creatures, two silhouetted figures watched the sunset, lost in the shared memory of their powerful teamwork and the hope that it could save this world, allowing them to finally return to Earth. As their shared hope lingered in the twilight, Corin confidently offered a glowing potion, leaving Lark to marvel at how he had acquired an item nearly as powerful as a low-tier elixir. In the fading light of a dramatic sunset, Corin Lok lifted the mysterious glowing potion to his lips, a single, ominous problem looming over his desperate act. That single, ominous problem, he realized with a clenched fist and beads of sweat, was the utterly comical frustration of being surrounded exclusively by other men. The world of the game was originally a vibrant tapestry of fantasy and action, woven together with the allure of simulated romance offered by its several captivating heroines. However, the narrator recalled that Sihu had never pursued a relationship with any of those heroines, only including them on the team when tactically necessary until their party inevitably became composed entirely of men. Against a vibrant sunset, the finicky protagonist Corin Lok sighed in disgust, questioning why his skilled new team had to be composed entirely of sweaty men. The tragic story began back then, on the day the Grand Swordmaster's granddaughter was murdered en route to her academy's entrance ceremony, leaving only a blood-stained path where her hand lay outstretched beside her fallen sword. The entire narrative fractured when Marie, the woman destined to be the final boss, began to inexplicably disappear into a vast empty canvas as if being erased from existence. Following her erasure, the story's corruption spiraled into a cascade of baffling disappearances and inexplicable deaths, flashing through violent scenes of bloodshed and contrived destruction. Illuminated against the darkness, Corin Lok's thoughts settled on the one element that surpassed all others, the mindset of Sihu Park. A subtle smile formed on his lips, the very expression that defined his own calculating personality. In a moment of chilling revelation, Corin Lok's true, sinister nature surfaced, his eyes glowing a menacing red and fangs glinting as he clutched a mysterious crystalline vial with a malevolent grin. In stunned reaction to this monstrous sight, Corin's face contorted in sheer disbelief as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. In the grand narrative of the game, a key heroine named Marie Dunaref was destined for greatness, yet her story became a mystery when she disappeared before the protagonist or Sihu could ever meet her. The legendary heroine's legacy then materialized before him as a hidden piece, the staff of Marie Dunaref, glowing within its case as he desperately questioned how such a relic could possibly be here. Following Sihu's nightly excursions, Corin Lok found himself in a hidden underground facility, staring in stunned disbelief at the impossible sight before him. Surrounded by countless glowing weapon displays in the vast chamber, the truth of the impossible sight dawned on him as he realized he was standing inside Sihu's personal inventory. In the sterile silence of a hidden chamber, a lone figure reeled in shock before a glass case containing an impossible relic, the legendary Demon Slayer blade, a sword believed to have vanished forever with the death of the heroine Arisha. It was a chamber of secrets, where not only hidden pieces but legendary artifacts like the rare, glowing Jaeger's mace were displayed in all their glory. A rare artifact was presented in a digital display, Lark's Spellbook, a relic from a character who had mysteriously gone missing during the game. A moment of pure shock rendered the world black, leaving only a fragmented thought that questioned the impossible sight materializing in the void. Bound and suspended in suffocating darkness, the captive Corin Lok's defiance ignited as a menacing red energy began to surge from his body, his eyes glowing with an intense, otherworldly light. The eerie silence of the hidden chamber was broken only by a low hum, as Corin Lok stood frozen before a containment unit where Arisha Adden hung suspended in chains, bathed in an ominous red light. Amidst a swirling vortex of crimson light and shadowy chains, a woman with a serene smile appeared, her presence prompting a nearby voice to utter the name Marie Dunaref in shocked recognition. Stepping into the darkened hall, Corin's eyes widened in alarm, a shocked curse catching in his throat as he discovered Jaeger standing before a case containing a powerfully glowing sword. The tense silence of the lower levels was broken by the sudden appearance of the masked Corin Lok, who fixed his wary gaze on an intruder and demanded to know what they were doing down there. The air grew thick with tension amidst the cold industrial machinery as an agitated Jaeger confronted Karen about his apparent lie, only for Corin to calmly explain that Marie wasn't human at all, but merely a demon. Bathed in an ominous red glow, Arisha Adden smirked with her eyes closed, questioning why anyone would waste such precious elder-class vampire blood. Within a chamber pulsing with an ominous red glow, Corin Lok smugly explained to a visibly uneasy Jaeger Hinspiter that he was simply using her in a more efficient way, the cold assertion punctuated only by the steady drip of a crimson liquid from the strange machine between them. The shocking realization washed over Corin Lok in a wave of crimson light, his eyes blazing as he accusedly reminded his companion that they had both drunk the very same thing. In a room thick with anticipation, Korin Loq tipped the ornate bottle to his lips, gulping down the glowing crimson potion with a grim and resolute focus. It began with a violent lurch in his stomach, and as the world itself seemed to bleed into a sickening red, Korin Loq desperately clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle a gag. In the tense, red glow of the chamber, Marie Denarev stood over a defeated Korin Loq, coolly dismissing his visible distress and prompting his pained retort about the month-long ordeal it had taken to capture their target. Bathed in a furious red glow, Korin Loq's face twisted in anguish as he desperately questioned why Clench would commit such an act. With a look of stern disapproval, Korin Loq launched into a critical explanation, stating the obvious need to progress through the story more efficiently and deriding the other's approach as a pointless waste of energy. Amidst a crimson-lit void, a frustrated Korin Loq looked up from the floor as an unseen entity systematically dismantled his every compassionate decision, accusing him of needlessly suffering losses for strangers, sparing irritating rivals, and caring for characters it deemed useless. As Korin's voice argued for the cold efficiency of a veteran player's strategy, his wide, horrified eyes betrayed the sudden, soul-crushing revelation that he had been deceived from the very beginning. Lying defeated in a crimson-hued darkness, Korin Loq's horror grew as he realized this was no mere game, prompting him to stammer a question about how many people his opponent had already claimed. The darkness was pierced by the intense blue glow of Korin Loq's eyes, his initial refusal giving way to a determined resolve to see the situation for himself. As ethereal blue chains pulsed around him, Korin's intense focus narrowed on a single thought. He was just 3 kills away from reaching the staggering count of 100,000. With an unseen onlooker screaming that he wasn't even human, Korin Loq's face twisted into a furious snarl, his eyes glowing with a crimson power as he clenched his teeth against the overwhelming strain. In a sudden explosion of fury, Jaeger Hinspitter grabbed Korin Loq by the collar and called him a monster, but Korin coldly told him to get a grip, dismissing their victims as mere NPCs and reminding Jaeger that he had killed them too. The confrontation began with a roar of fury as the fiery-eyed Korin Loq gripped his adversary, shouting that he had only ever killed irredeemable villains who were trying to destroy the world. The confrontation reached a fever pitch as Korin Loq's jaw grit with rage, his voice seething as he furiously questioned the very mention of efficiency in specs. The tense moment erupted as Jaeger Hinspitter violently grabbed Korin Loq, his voice raw with fury as he demanded to know why a mage would take the glowing Demon Slayer blade, a weapon meant only for knights, and what else he wrongly believed he was owed. In a chamber where glowing chains held Orisha Aiden captive, a triumphant Korin Loq scoffed at the inefficiency around him, claiming he could easily craft something far better with his own power. Consumed by a furious energy, Korin Loq's eyes blazed with an intense pink light as he accused his adversary of being a psycho who used people as punching bags for twisted urges, his tirade cut short by sudden disbelief. The tense air shattered as an arm lunged suddenly from the side, grabbing a stunned Korin Loq by surprise. The air shattered with a thunderous slam as Korin Loq, a figure of pure determination, drove a devastating blast of glowing energy into his adversary. The world shattered into a crimson nightmare around Korin Loq as blood poured from his face, his mind reeling in disbelief at the devastating words that had just been uttered. In the aftermath of a brutal confrontation, a bloodied Korin Loq sat defeated on the ground, pleading with the approaching figure that this betrayal was not what he deserved after everything he had done for them. The world seemed to dissolve into a soft blur of light as a voice finally confessed that there was only one person they ever truly thought of. As a maelstrom of purple energy erupted around him, Korin Loq's eyes blazed with obsessive fury as he loomed over a defeated Jaeger Hinspitter, roaring that he alone should be Jaeger's entire world, not some reckless idiot who gets beaten up and flustered around girls. His obsessive rage then focused into a terrifying calm, the purple aura intensifying around him as he declared that from this moment forward, he would hold back nothing. In the wake of an unbelievable declaration, a bloodied Korin Loq could only stare in wide-eyed shock as his mind raced to comprehend the horrifying possibility of what he'd just heard. From the ground, a bewildered Jaeger accused him of breaking character, lamenting that after 199 episodes together, he couldn't just take such a sharp turn on their 200th. Looming over his companion in a shroud of dark energy, Jaeger Hinspitter confessed that he had destroyed everything for their future together, a revelation that crashed down on Korin with the horrifying realization that this obsession was the very reason their party had been exclusively male. Responding to the terrifying confession, Korin's own power erupted in a brilliant aura, his eyes blazing as he calmly assured him that the other men were just eye candy, trailing off as he began to declare who he truly loved. Amidst the swirling chaos of a final confrontation, a voice cut through the darkness with a single, shattering revelation. The one responsible was him. Jaeger Hinspitter answered Korin Loq's desperate cry with a savage punch that landed with a blinding flash of power. In the shadow of an ominous cloaked figure, a terrified Korin Lok crouched low, his mind screaming that he was utterly unprepared for this horrifying ordeal when he had never even been on a date. Pushing past his terror, he suddenly burst into motion, sliding across the dark floor and extending his foot through the sinister purple tendrils. A tense moment was shattered by a violent surge as crackling purple tendrils shot out from an unseen source to yank a dark-clad figure off their feet. The story erupts into a maelstrom of dark purple energy, its violent tendrils constricting Korin Loq as his anguished scream tears through the chaos. A torrent of malevolent purple energy erupted without warning, coiling around the figure's torso and squeezing with crushing force. In a surge of panic desperation, a bloodied Korin Loq struggled against the glowing purple tendrils of magic dragging him down, pleading in disbelief to be released. His desperate plea, however, gave way to cold resolve as he seized control of the magic, halting the fleeing figure and vowing to lock him away forever. In an oppressive void, Korin Loq struggled against glowing purple restraints as a towering, shadowy figure loomed over him, declaring that he now belonged to it. As the entity's voice declared him the only real person in a world of fakes, Korin's eyes blazed with a defiant crimson light, his body writhing against the glowing purple chains. In a maelstrom of glitching purple energy, Korin Loq's desperate scream tore through the air as he vehemently denied the accusation, his face a mask of blood, tears, and utter terror. His terror vanished in an instant, replaced by a confident smirk as the chaotic energy coalesced into a formidable magical circle around him, and he vowed that this battle would soon be over. Engulfed in a swirling vortex of dark, pixelated energy, Korin Lok's eyes glowed with sinister power as he promised that they would finally be together for eternity. The world dissolved into an endless, silent black, leaving only the pensive question of whether this empty realm was a place Sihu had created. Amidst the roar of turbulent water in a dark and foreboding space, a glowing system notification pierced the gloom, announcing the commencement of the final stage. As the final confrontation began, Korin Lok surfaced from the turbulent depths, reflecting with bitter certainty that the selfish bastard he'd been watching would claim this last victory for himself as well. Submerged to his neck in dark, rippling water, Korin Lok looked upward with a pained expression, cursing in frustration at the thought of another person clearing the final stage. Then, a stark red system message flared to life, confirming his worst fears by announcing the player's death and the failure of the challenge. In a roaring vortex of viscous darkness, Korin Lok found himself floating helplessly, completely submerged and at the mercy of the unknown. A sudden rush of wind shattered his sense of drowning in darkness, sending sunlit curtains billowing wildly into the room. A wave of sudden, suffocating panic crashed over Korin Loq, leaving him gasping for air with wide, bloodshot eyes. The overwhelming panic gave way to a violent lurch as he suddenly sprang from the ornate ceiling, plummeting headfirst toward the sunlit bed. Bathed in the morning light streaming through his window, Korin Lok looked out upon a sprawling, vibrant city, reflecting on the impossible truth that he had returned to the past. His hands settled in the warm light as he recalled that this was the very day, 3 years ago, he had first arrived in this world. In a silent, sweltering moment where everything hung in the balance, a pair of hands clenched together, slick with sweat and trembling with unspoken intensity. Bathed in a stark, bright light, Korin Lok's jaw tightened with a singular, chilling resolve. He had to kill him. In the quiet solitude of a grand chamber, Korin Lok's fist tightened with grim resolve, his thoughts consumed by a single, agonizing purpose. He had to kill Sihu Park, the main player. At that very moment, a world away, a cataclysm began as the Lothian River violently flooded and the earth itself started to crumble. The memory of the Lothian River incident began with a vision of utter devastation, where a broken dam had unleashed a torrent that swept away an entire village, leaving the corpses of 1,000 water demons and even more villagers in its wake, a tragedy that would forever define Sihu's reaction. The solemn memory was shattered by Korin's maniacal laughter, his eyes glowing a sinister red as he reveled in the amazing, rumbling power he now commanded. The memory of Jaeger Hinspitter's sinister, red-eyed grin flashed through Korin's mind, and with it came the sudden, chilling realization of what that snicker had truly meant. On a desolate cliff overlooking the water, two figures watched as the glowing energy of countless slain souls coalesced, one of them basking in the silent, triumphant gloat of claiming all the experience for himself. Bathed in an ominous purple glow, Korin Lok's intense eyes narrowed as he considered the 3 final kills that would bring his total to a staggering 100,000, a feat that would solidify his reputation as a vicious murderer. With the conviction that this was his single, fleeting chance, Korin Lok exploded into a desperate sprint across the barren ground. Beneath the imposing, red-glowing sign of Merkava Academy, a lone hooded figure considered his rival Sihu, acknowledging that within these walls, a place designed for the sole purpose of strengthening players, they were both, for now, just ordinary 5th tiers. Bathed in the swirling chaos of a dark aura, the hooded Korenlok's red eyes gleamed with smug certainty as he mused that the true awakening of power would only begin upon entering Merkava. With only 5 days left before the Merkava entrance ceremony, Korenlok tore through the forest, driven by the urgent need to unlock the monstrous potential just beginning to stir within him. Deep within a serene forest, sunlight streamed through the lush green canopy, illuminating a cluster of vibrant yellow mushrooms on a weathered tree branch. In a barren and unforgiving landscape, a focused Korenlok found what he was looking for, swiftly yanking a cluster of strange mushrooms from the dry earth. With sweat pouring down his face and fangs bared from the immense strain, Korenlok gripped the strange mushroom, his glowing red eyes reflecting the desperate realization that it was his only remaining hope of killing Sue Park. A quest suddenly materialized, presenting a critical mission to protect a broken-down carriage and its passengers from a monster-infested forest on the road to Merkava City. The night began under the glow of a vibrant full moon, its light washing over a serene mountain range where the dense forests held their breath in quiet anticipation. In the aftermath of a fierce battle, Korenlok and Arisha Aden stood over the vanquished horned creature, the air thick with relief as she cheerfully admitted he wasn't bad for a rookie. Flattered by her praise, he responded with a charming wink and a sheepish laugh, scratching the back of his head as he expressed his gratitude. As a foreboding rumble echoed from the mountains, a man's urgent voice pierced the darkness, announcing to Mr. Leon and Miss Laura that their carriage was finally repaired. As light from a crystal lantern cut through the darkness of the forest, the armored company gathered to depart, their leader calling them to move out while a weary Lark Bergman trailed off mid-sentence, already dreaming of a comfortable bed. The air itself seemed to shatter as an overwhelming power erupted from Korenlok in a deafening roar, forcing a terrified Jäger-Hinspeter to clutch his arm in sheer shock. The sky abruptly tore open, unleashing a massive jagged object wreathed in a radiant blue aura that plummeted towards 2 armored figures who could only look on with alert apprehension. With a shouted warning lost in the violent whoosh of the attack, the confrontation exploded as Korenlok launched a powerful kick towards a suddenly alarmed Arisha Aden. In a blinding flash of light, the ground between the 2 combatants erupted with a deafening crunch, the raw force of the impact sending one figure hurtling backward while Korenlok braced himself against the shockwave. Amid the frantic clash of steel, a comrade's desperate shout of her name was met with Laura's fierce acknowledgement, her glowing sword already singing as she drew it. An earth-shattering roar ripped through the air, announcing the arrival of a monstrous, purple-skinned demonic beast immediately identified as a second-tier Beowulf. The air itself seemed to shatter as a hulking, horned beast erupted in a furious roar, its rage manifesting as a volatile aura of raw power. Bursting from the shadows of the foliage, Korenlok gasped for breath, his eyes glowing with crimson rage as he cursed his own futility, realizing he had arrived too late. As everything faded to a stark white, a single anxious thought consumed him. A desperate wish for just a little more time to prepare. The battle erupted in a spray of blood as Koren's sword bit deep into a massive horned beast with a sickening tear. The mortally wounded beast unleashed a final, agonized roar that sent Koren collapsing to the ground, his mind consumed with the thought that he could have saved them, prompting a horrified cry from Arisha. With danger closing in, a determined Korenlok urged his distressed companion toward the safety of a carriage, shouting that he would buy them time to escape. He gave his companion one final push into the vehicle, shouting for them to go on ahead and promising to catch up later as Arisha watched from inside with a concerned expression. In the heart of a watery cataclysm, Korenlok turned back in alarm as Arisha Aden suddenly stopped, her voice ringing with desperate resolve as she declared she could not abandon Leon. Engulfed in a shimmering blue aura, Korenlok looked up in sheer terror at the monstrous horned creature whose guttural snarl seemed to echo his own desperate thought to run away. The battle ignited with a deafening crash as Korenlok's sword met the tough hide of a massive horned beast, his own surprise evident as the impact shuddered through his entire body. With glowing red eyes fixed intently on an unseen figure, Korenlok knew there was one thing he had to confirm before getting involved, whether that was truly Sihu Park, the protagonist destined to save the world. It began with a single, profound question echoing through his thoughts. Could this person truly be the main player, another soul who had come from Earth just like him? With his sword drawn and his face a mask of apprehension, Korenlok stood firm as an immense horned shadow with glowing eyes began to manifest behind him, an ominous echo of his own power. His apprehension vanished in an instant, replaced by a confident smirk as the shadow roared into a monstrous reality, prompting him to marvel aloud at its truly immense scale. Against the vast, moonlit night sky, Korenlok brandished his glowing sword, his voice cutting through the silence with a desperate command to get down. A deafening clang shattered the air as Arisha Aden, descending in her school uniform, drove her sword deep into the roaring, blue-furred beast. Against a backdrop of a dark, cloudy sky, Arisha Aiden's expression filled with sheer disbelief as she struggled to comprehend how her powerful attack had just been blocked. In a chaotic storm of debris and raw energy, Arisha Aiden surged forward in a furious lunge, her sword cutting through the air as Korin Lok held his ground in focused support. With his face cast in shadow, revealing only a grimly set jaw, Korin Lok's resolute voice commanded everyone to step aside, for he alone would handle the beast. In a flash of purple energy, a formidable new figure was introduced. Arisha Aiden, the second daughter of a noble house and the fated wielder of the legendary Demon Slayer blade, a potential ally of immense power. With a surge of worry coursing through him, Korin Lok's hand erupted in a vibrant purple glow as he tightly gripped the hilt of his weapon. A glint of sharp understanding lit Korin Lok's focused blue eye as he suddenly recalled that this simple tutorial quest concealed a hidden Easter egg connected to Arisha Aiden. With a malevolent grin and eyes glowing a sinister red, Korin Lok brought his crackling purple energy blade down upon a terrified Arisha Aiden, declaring he would not miss the moment of her death. In the heart of the chaotic fray, a brutal, definitive strike cut through the air, aimed with lethal intent. It all began in a flash of intense focus, as Korin Lok's eyes blazed with a sudden, overwhelming power that threw his face into stark shadow. A surge of incandescent rage consumed Korin Lok, his eye flaring with a menacing red light as he gritted his teeth and finally confirmed the identity of his adversary, Sihu. Kneeling amidst the wreckage, Arisha Aiden stared up in stunned disbelief as Korin Lok revealed a hand wreathed in violet energy, her mind demanding to know why he held such impossible power. As if struck by an unseen force, Arisha Aiden stumbled forward, her entire being racked with a pained effort that caused her brilliant blue eyes to blaze with overwhelming power. A sinister smile spread across Korin Lok's face, his eyes lost to shadow as he feigned nervousness and apologized for his hand slipping, all while a glowing purple knife pulsed with energy against the glitching backdrop. The silence shattered as a monstrous, dragon-like creature with glowing red eyes unleashed a ferocious roar, its raw power shaking the very air. As the injured Arisha Aiden desperately clashed swords with a roaring monster, a stark notification revealed a grim opportunity. Her death would mean the player could claim her coveted Demon Slayer blade. The duel intensified as their swords met with a sharp clang, and while parrying the attack, Korin Lok coolly noted the poison wasn't enough to kill a major character like Arisha Aiden, forcing her to leap back as her strike was effortlessly deflected. The air itself seemed to crackle as a brilliant blue aura erupted around Arisha Aiden, who gripped her katana and centered herself with a resolute command to remain calm. In a moment of overwhelming pressure, Arisha Aiden squeezed her eyes shut, sweat beading on her brow as she desperately willed herself to concentrate. With a rush of power that seemed to warp the very air around him, Korin Lok's eyes ignited in a brilliant, determined blue. Responding to his surge of energy, Arisha Aiden's silhouette flared with an identical blue light as she prepared to unleash her ace skill, the quick draw position. As a horned monster unleashed a deafening roar amidst a blast of crimson energy, the cloaked figure of Arisha Aiden stood her ground, gathering a swirling storm of blue magic to meet the oncoming threat. Observing the incredible display, Korin Lok's glowing red eyes narrowed with analytical intensity as he realized she might possess the strength to defeat the Beowulf all on her own. With a smug smirk and eyes glowing a menacing red, Korin Lok brandished a radiant purple dagger, resolving that he simply could not let her succeed. The air itself seemed to split as Arisha Aiden, wreathed in a swirling blue aura of determination, thrust her sword forward to unleash a blinding purple energy strike. In a blinding explosion of purple energy, Arisha Aiden parried the lethal projectile with her glowing sword, crying out in furious recognition of her attacker. As a dark, swirling aura erupted from within, Korin Lok's eye ignited with a brilliant blue light, confirming his triumphant realization that his power was no mistake. Deep within the monstrous lair, a determined Arisha Aiden stood firm, meeting the glowing yellow gaze of a terrifying, blue-skinned dragon. A tempest of raw power erupted around Korin Lok as he channeled all his fury into a single, blindingly fast thrust of his glowing sword. It began with a blinding flash of violence, the sickening thud of a blade striking home again and again in a spray of crimson. Suddenly, a blinding impact erupted with a deafening slam, sending a violent spray of blood splattering across the blurred scene. In the heat of their desperate battle, a monstrously transformed Korin Lok unleashed a brutal clawed strike, sending Arisha Aiden flying back with a pained gasp. Beneath the cold steel of Korin Lok's sword, the defeated Arisha Aiden gasped for breath, her mind reeling with the desperate question of why. In a flash of ethereal light, Korin Lok triumphantly raised his new weapon, shouting with glee that he had finally obtained the legendary Demon Slayer sword. His triumphant expression settled into a confident smirk as he acknowledged the sword required a special skill, a complication he chose to ignore for now. Standing at the edge of a mysterious, glowing blue forest with staff in hand, Korin Lok suddenly remembered something important. A sinister smile crept across his face as he considered the chilling possibility that killing NPCs would also grant him experience points, the light of his blade glinting ominously behind him. Amidst the tense aftermath, the wounded Marie Daenerys took a defiant step toward the monstrous, horned shadow of Orisha Aden, her hand outstretched as Corin Lok watched the confrontation with a subtle, unsettling smile. It happened in a flash, as Corin Lok's gaze shot upward, his eyes widening to reflect a vision of pure, unadulterated shock. That shock instantly twisted into a malevolent grin, his silhouette illuminated by the crimson glow of his eyes and an ominous, pulsating moon. Without warning, the air itself seemed to ignite as a wing of pure, fiery energy burst from Corin Lok's back, his red eyes widening in stunned disbelief. This sudden eruption of power sent a violent tremor through him, forcing him to stumble and double over in a fit of coughs as he struggled to control the glowing sword. The moment ignited with a surge of raw power, filling the air with shimmering particles as Corin Lok's eye blazed with an ominous crimson intensity. A sudden searing pain ripped through Corin Lok, who cried out in horrified confusion as a mysterious glowing orange substance began to seep from his very eyes. Deep within a darkened forest, with the light of his sword illuminating a defeated shadow at his feet, Corin Lok roared into the trees, demanding the coward he sensed was lurking there to come out and face him immediately. From a swirling abyss of chaotic red and black energy, a horde of small, single-horned creatures erupted, their insistent squeaking heralding an aggressive charge. Deep within the woods, a dangerous plan hinged on the potent powder of the local topanic mushrooms, an irresistible delicacy for demonic beasts that now coated Sihu entirely. As a blood-red vision of carnage filled his mind, Corin Lok cried out in furious denial, realizing with sickening dread that to these monsters, his companion was nothing but a rare, mouth-watering steak. The scene erupted into a frenzy as Corin Lok, his short sword a blur, furiously battled a swarm of squeaking horned creatures while roaring at them to get lost. In the dim aftermath of a fierce forest battle, Corin supported the wounded Orisha amidst the bodies of monstrous creatures, his furious curses giving way to profound relief as he realized she was still alive. In a dark and foreboding space, Corin Lok stood as a defiant shield for the terrified Orisha Aden, confronting a towering horned beast whose glowing eyes pierced through the gloom. With a surge of raw, determined power, Corin Lok dug his fingers, one adorned with a distinctive ring, into the monster's maw, wrenching its fanged jaws apart with a deafening crack. The tense quiet was abruptly broken by Corin Lok, whose glowing red eyes burned with intensity as he leaned forward to call out to someone just out of sight. Under a luminous night sky, a horrified Jaeger Hinspitter leveled his sword at the kneeling form of Corin Lok, whose eyes now blazed with a terrifying red light as Jaeger demanded to know who he truly was. In the aftermath of a swift battle, Corin Lok's hand clenched tightly as he reflected on the undeniable power of his new Demon Slayer blade. A wave of pure shock washed over Corin Lok, sweat beading on his cheek as he stammered an incredulous question at the impossible sight before him. A shocked whisper of his name, Corin Lok, broke the silence of the dark forest, where the man now stood engulfed in a terrifying purple aura, his eyes burning with a malevolent red light. The tense quiet of a dimly lit forest was shattered by a sudden encounter, as Corin Lok confronted a figure from his past, demanding to know why he was there, while Jaeger Hinspitter stood ready, silently questioning if Corin had truly lost his memories. With a menacing smirk and glowing red eyes that pierced the vibrant purple backdrop, Corin Lok declared the situation even more advantageous for him, casually mocking his opponent's poor swordsmanship. In the midst of a tense standoff, the young swordsman Corin Lok could only grip his blade as his eyes widened in sheer, uncomprehending shock. The quiet tension shattered with a powerful surge as Corin Lok burst forward, his eyes igniting in a blaze of raw, crimson power. In an instant of agonizing shock, a dark and jagged power scattered violently from Corin Lok's face, his own hand contorting into a horrifying claw before his very eyes. Clutching his head in blinding agony, Corin screamed that the scum responsible for his pain must die. Dodging a sudden storm of purple energy slashes from Corin Lok, Jaeger Hinspitter immediately assessed that while the blows lacked precision, their sheer speed was undeniable. Barely dodging a vicious purple slash, Corin lunged forward, grimly accepting that Sihu's superior physical stats meant he had no choice but to take a significant risk. Amidst the chaos of a desperate fight, Corin Lok channeled all his focus into a single, downward strike, his glowing sword cleaving the air with furious intent. In the heat of a ferocious battle, Corin Lok lunged forward with his energized blade, viciously taunting his opponent with the fear of death while demanding they keep their guard up. In a brilliant surge of azure energy, Corin Lok gripped his sword, his entire being focused on manifesting the fangs of his powerful technique. In a sudden, terrifying flash, Corin's world narrowed to the glowing point of a knife plunging towards his face, its light threatening to become the only thing he could see. Amidst a crackle of red energy, a furious Korin Loq roared as he plunged his dagger downwards. The strike met with the sharp clang of a desperate block from his opponent's katana. As the battle raged, Korin Loq's face contorted in pure fury, his world narrowing to the terrifying glint of a massive blade swinging just past his eyes. The air itself seemed to split with a sharp whoosh as Korin Loq, his eyes burning a furious red, launched a dagger with lethal precision and unwavering focus. A deafening slam echoed through the desolate forest as Korin Loq, driven by fierce determination, drove his glowing fist into the opponent already defeated at his feet. The fierce battle took a devastating turn as Korin Loq was caught off guard, a piercing scream of agony escaping him as a blade was brutally driven into his chest. The world narrowed to a single, grief-stricken eye as Korin Loq's composure finally shattered, tears streaming down his face in the wake of an unbearable revelation. That unbearable grief instantly ignited into furious power, culminating in a brilliant upward slash of his dagger. The world blurred into a crimson streak as Korin Loq, his eyes wide with horror, gripped the hilt of a dagger now slick with blood. The brutal sound of the blade striking home tore through the moment. With a hand that trembled from the strain, Korin Loq began his grim task, forcefully pushing the blade deeper into his own body. Ignoring the searing pain, he forced the blade deeper with a final, brutal push, his expression twisting in a mixture of terror and grim determination. In a sudden explosion of crimson power, the duel concluded with a furious Korin Loq pinning the overwhelmed Jaeger Hinspiter to the ground. His mind cleared, leaving only a single, resonant expression of gratitude for the help he had received in his past life. Pinned by an assailant's pale hand, Korin choked on his own blood and tears while a disembodied voice grudgingly admitted that he had, after all, helped them become stronger. In the dim light of the forest, the steel of a dagger glinted in Korin Loq's gloved hand as he stood over a fallen figure, his resolve absolute as he acknowledged he had no regrets. It began with an agonizing struggle, as the battered Korin Loq, gasping for breath, could only manage the start of a single word against the crushing force assailing him. Against a blood-soaked backdrop, the reflection of a lone victor shimmered above the inverted form of the monster he had finally managed to kill. The digital world fractured with a sudden, unsettling error, unexpectedly revealing the profile of a Level 1 player named Sihu Park. In the silent aftermath of a catastrophic failure, a system screen flickered to life, its cold text announcing the player's death while initiating a rapid analysis that identified a single unexpected variable, Korin Loq. Within the cold logic of the system, a new profile emerged for a Level 1 non-player character named Korin Loq, initiating a thorough analysis of his potential, ideology, suitability, and entire gameplay history. The analysis having concluded, the system initiated the succession of players' burden, officially designating Korin Loq as the new hero and commencing a minimum backup transfer in the event of total scenario destruction. Our story, the continued successor, commences with the profile of Korin Loq, whose status as a mere Level 1 non-player character is starkly contradicted by the crimson glow in his eyes and the sharp points of his fangs. Suddenly, a holographic window designated him as the continued successor, a sub-player, and his heart hammered in his chest as he realized this might mean he could finally see stat windows too. Racked by a violent coughing fit, Korin Loq struggled to catch his breath in the oppressive gloom, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down his pained face. Looking up through a haze of pain, he gasped out her name at the sight of Arisha Aden standing over him, panting heavily as blood seeped from a grievous wound in her chest. In the deep gloom of the forest, Korin cradled the grievously wounded Arisha, whose panicked cries of being unable to see answered his urgent question, leaving him to grimly note that she could at least still speak. Holding the disoriented Arisha close, Korin accurately described her symptoms of dizziness and sensory failure, prompting her to stammer in shock as he inwardly deduced from her slurred words that Sihu had poisoned her with peacock frog venom. In the grim aftermath of the attack, a blood-stained blade remained plunged into its victim, a testament to a poison just shy of perfection, a flaw that had been the only thing to spare Arisha from instant death. With a gut-wrenching squelch, Korin extracted the poison fang, his relief instantly replaced by the urgent realization that he now had to stop the bleeding and neutralize the venom before it was too late. As flames and blood painted a chaotic scene, Arisha cried out in shock when Korin suddenly seized her arm, reassuring her that he was an expert at stopping bleeding and neutralizing poison. Gazing down with intense concern, Korin Loq's mind raced to find something, anything she could bite down on to keep from injuring her tongue. The tense silence was shattered as Korin Loq unleashed a brilliant surge of power from his outstretched hand, forcing Arisha Aden to witness the true extent of his abilities. A wave of apprehension washed over Korin Loq, his red eyes fixed on an unseen problem as sweat beaded on his brow and a pensive hum escaped his lips. With Marita Neref bleeding profusely from a critical wound, a desperate Korin Loq silenced her pained protests by forcing an object between her teeth, commanding her to bite down. With the quiet rustle of fabric, a shirtless Korin Lok pulled his garments down, a confident smirk on his face as he warned his companion to bite down hard for the pain that was about to come. Gripping the blood-soaked blade that had just ended the main player's life, Korin Lok was consumed by the lingering question of why he had been sent back 3 years in time to commit this very act. With a brutal yank, Korin Lokwe drove his blade into Orisha Aden, his mind consumed by the desperate goal of saving someone who had died in his previous life. In the oppressive quiet of a dark forest, Korin Lok cradled the unconscious Marie Denareth, the monstrous limb of their defeated foe lying starkly in the foreground. In what felt like her final moments, a grievously wounded Orisha Aden was held aloft, her fading consciousness clinging to the triumphant thought that she had saved someone, the only thing she ever truly wanted to do. In the quiet of the night, a solitary campfire crackled warmly, its flames gently bubbling the contents of a pot suspended above. Working over the bubbling concoction, a shirtless Korin pleaded with a groaning Orisha to hold on, promising that he was preparing an antidote for her right now. Surrounded by a soft glow of healing particles, the unconscious Orisha Aden was met by a hesitant voice from the darkness, offering a shaky reassurance that people don't die so easily. As smoldering embers cast a faint glow through the dark forest, a grateful voice emerged from the shadows, asking the stoic Korin Loke for the name of the man who had just saved their life. In the quiet aftermath of a recent battle, Korin Lok gently supported the injured Orisha Aden, cryptically dismissing her concerns by telling her she didn't need to know, which only left her more confused. As an antidote simmered over a crackling campfire, Korin Lok cradled his injured companion, quietly assuring them that he would wake them soon while privately resolving that his next actions must remain a secret. In this strange new reality, Korin Lok began to analyze his situation by tapping his staff to the ground, a glowing orange circle blooming at his feet as he reminded himself that this world was, fundamentally, a story about a hero. At the gates of the prestigious Merkave Academy, the journey of the main player began, a path where solving the school's many incidents would ultimately forge a hero capable of saving the world. The path of a hero is forged by confronting villains and a final boss to save the world, a stark reality illustrated by a radiant, determined figure poised against a great, shadowy evil. Atop a mountain of slain beasts, 2 triumphant heroes rested beneath a dramatic sunset, bound by the grim reality that the entire world would be destroyed unless the main player defeated the final boss. A sword hilt jutted from Korin Lok's chest as he stared upward in agony, his apparent death prompting an unseen speaker to question who would now take on the role of the main player. In the oppressive darkness, Korin Lok's fists clenched tightly, his eyes glowing with the resolute conviction that there was no one else left but him. The weight of his new title settled upon Korin Lok, his eyes glowing with a fierce red as he silently fumed, questioning if they seriously expected him to take on the role of main player without any perks. Suddenly, his connection to his own power was severed as a cascade of crimson warning windows flooded his vision, declaring that access to every critical system, from his stats to his inventory, was now denied. Slumped in dejection, Korin Lok grappled with the bitter disappointment that his new role as the sub-players had unlocked none of the special abilities or stat windows he had so eagerly anticipated. As the lone campfire crackled against the encroaching night, a new resolve settled over Korin Lok. He knew he could no longer rely solely on his memories of the future or his mysterious backup, but must instead actively seek power outside the system. With a swipe of his glowing fingertips across the dark interface, Korin Lok solidified 3 years of grueling effort, resolving that he was no longer a mere extra or an ordinary man from Earth. It began with a blinding surge of power as Korin Lok, his focus absolute, laid his hands upon a glowing sigil and unleashed an overwhelming flare of fiery magic. Deep within the forest, a violent surge of fire erupted from the kneeling form of Korin Lok, his raw power echoing through the trees as another figure lay motionless nearby. With his eyes glowing a fierce red, a triumphant smirk crossed his face as he confirmed that his desperate gamble for survival had worked exactly as he had thought. Born from a past of utter failure in the arcane arts, his journey into magic began with the only path left open to him, mastering the ancient runes, which he remembers as potent letters of power encircling a symbolic, glowing tree of life. Among them, 3 symbols glowed with particular significance in his memory: the runes of duty, restraint, and oath, known collectively as the runes of Troth. At the center of a complex magical circle, a figure of pure light began to form, embodying the dual-edged power of ancient runes, one of the world's most fundamental laws, offering both extraordinary strength and a gateway to utter destruction. As his eyes flared with a menacing red light, Korin resolved to take that devastating power for himself, declaring that he would engrave all 3 runes directly onto his body while revealing a sharp, predatory fang. The first of many trials began with a single, dark mark seared onto the shoulder of Korin Lok, a man whose intense red eyes burned with grim resolve as he touched the fresh brand. A guttural cry of agony tore from Korin Lok as a crimson aura flared around him, his eyes glowing with power while arcane symbols seared themselves onto his arm, forcing him to hiss a single, resolute word about his duty. The nature of the rune was revealed to be a simple but powerful one, granting strength to its caster for every promise they upheld to themselves, even for the most mundane of duties. As the narrator considered his path forward, he realized that any vow he made would need significant weight to raise his stats, a concept that appeared in his mind as a cosmic scale where a simple promise was easily outweighed by a far greater one. Amidst a fizzle of raw energy, glowing runes flared to life on Korenlok's straining arms as he resolved to never turn a blind eye to the misfortune of good people, a vow he felt he could repeat endlessly. Before a glowing red heart ensnared by chains, a solemn duty was declared, to never ignore the suffering of good people, promising that power would grow with each completed quest. A chilling system message broke through the silence, outlining the first consequence, a 10-point penalty for failing the duty, and ominously trailing off as it prepared to reveal the second. Shrouded in shadow and anguish, Korenlok bit down hard on his finger, his entire being focused on the singular, desperate act of restraint. A wave of excruciating pain washed over the shirtless warrior, Korenlok, forcing a guttural cry from his lips as mysterious symbols began to glow fiercely on his arm. In a world governed by supernatural abilities, a stark blue message materialized from the ether, revealing a fundamental restraint, an inability to perceive spirits. The story begins in a world where everyone possesses a third eye, a gift that reveals the countless spiritual beings, from ghosts to nature spirits, who drift unseen just beyond the physical realm. It began with an explanation of a fundamental spiritual law. Because interaction requires mutual perception, ghostly beings could only influence those with a third eye, leaving ordinary humans completely untouched by their antics. As the trial began, a stark system notification materialized, imposing a dangerous restraint that promised a devastating 600% damage penalty if broken, while shifting all combat accuracy away from spiritual beings and towards physical ones. Within a swirling vortex of raw spiritual energy, Korenlok glowed with a golden aura, realizing the very penalty that once prevented him from interacting with spirits had now become a powerful shield to protect him from them all. As the world dissolved into an inky blackness, a voice declared the final ominous condition, the third oath. As a hand brushed against his skin, intricate blue and red runes ignited with a mystical glow, revealing a dangerous backup system where the weight of an oath demanded the caster take an enormous risk. Eyes squeezed shut with immense strain, Koren recalled the solemn reason why neither he nor Sihu had ever dared to use this particular rune in his previous life. Within a digital reality framed by glowing system menus, Korenlok considered the story of his predecessor, Sihu, who had mastered the game's every function yet still failed to win the final battle. Against the silent backdrop of a vulnerable Earth, the glowing runes across Korenlok's chest burned with resolve as he accepted the heaviest oath of all, vowing to save the world. In the darkness, amidst the spectral shimmer of chains, a profound principle was declared, a grand goal that every true warrior should aspire to, an oath bound by colossal ambition. Within a crimson abyss, an arcane ritual concluded as ethereal chains of light tightened around a living heart, searing the completed rune engraving into its flesh. In the digital silence, an ornate system message materialized, declaring with ominous finality that the runes of Troth, a binding pact of duty, restraint, and oath, would now be applied to the sub-player. A dire warning echoed that failure to keep an oath would result in the sub-player's death, its words manifesting as glowing, chain-like runes that erupted across Korenlok's body in a torrent of furious red energy. Our story begins not with a hero, but with the creators who brought this world to life, their names appearing against a stark black screen. The world snapped into focus as Korenlok's wide blue eye blinked once in stunned surprise, a single bead of sweat betraying his sudden shock. As the morning sun cast a brilliant glare across the room, Arisha Aiden's eyes shot open, her mind grappling with a sudden and overwhelming sense of disorientation. In a lavishly appointed room, Korenlok jolted awake with a sharp cry of pain, his struggle to sit up immediately drawing the attention of a nearby nurse who asked how he felt. Arisha Aiden awoke to the stark white of a hospital room, her disoriented mind barely processing the information from a nearby voice that she was in Merkava City's emergency ward. Awakening before a grand castle, Marie Denarev's frantic search for her rescuer was met with the alarming news that he had just left, prompting an attendant to warn her against moving so soon. Waking abruptly in an unfamiliar bed, a disoriented yet determined Arisha Aiden sat up, insisting that she was fine and immediately demanding to know where her belongings were. In the quiet of the room, a soft, ethereal light pulsed from a worn leather satchel and belt left on a wooden table as a stunned voice broke the silence, wondering if this could possibly be his. With a sudden, anxious grip, Arisha Aiden's inspection of a dark strap turned to horror as she realized it was still stained with blood. The moment explodes with urgency, zeroing in on a single, determined blue eye that glints as Korenlok desperately cries out for a nurse. The workday routine was shattered in an instant as a pink-haired nurse, Marie Denaref, flinched violently at an unseen summons and stammered out a startled response. Sitting up in her sickbed, Arisha Aiden hopefully asked for honey bomb candies, only for her caregiver, Marie Denaref, to gently explain that for now, she would have to make do with porridge. 4 days after the harrowing tutorial quest, the morning of the Merkava Academy entrance ceremony dawned, casting a bright, anticipatory light upon its grand, classical facade. As Corin Lok searched through his wallet for the student ID he needed to enter, his rummaging came to a sudden halt when he discovered something completely unexpected tucked within. A quiet moment of unpacking was interrupted by the rustle of a mysterious letter, one he was certain he had never packed himself. In the quiet of an ornate room, Corin Lok stood listening to a message from his parent, whose voice swelled with pride and the hope that he would one day become a mighty protector of many. In what should have been an ordinary moment, Corin Lok, a man with no special talents, let out a troubled sigh as he wondered how this strange new element could have been slipped into his world. He recalled the difficult period after waking up in a new body, a time of confusion made bearable only by the memory of a loving family who had accepted him as their own without question. Gathered around a warm, candlelit dinner table, Corin raised his hands with a radiant smile, confessing that this was how he grew to love not only his companions but the entire world as well. With a quiet, self-assured smile, he realized that this capacity for love was the fundamental difference that set him apart from Sihu. The scene opened to a grand, vaulted transport hub, its massive archway framing a stunning vista of snowy peaks and an endless sky. A buzz of excitement filled the air as crowds of students, Corin among them, stared up in wonder at the countless massive trains, the realization dawning that this was the legendary Merkava Academy. Within the grand, echoing hall of the academy, a cheerful senior with light blue hair named Arisha Aiden waved warmly, calling for all the newly arrived first years to gather by her side. While the new students gathered, an exceptionally cheerful girl named Marie Dunareth approached the towering Corin Lok, confirming he was a fellow first year before enthusiastically commenting on his impressive stature. With a cheerful smile, Arisha Aiden broke the silence by offering a simple potato, prompting a bewildered Corin Lok to question the unexpected gift. Meanwhile, far from their quiet conversation, a streetcar tore through the city with a deafening roar. Gazing out at the sprawling campus, their attention was drawn by their guide, a cheerful woman named Marie Dunaref, to a brightly lit structure she explained was the Creation Building, the research center for students of magic. This promising first-tier mage, a second-year student with a bright future, then gestured towards the training room to enthusiastically explain its vast armory, but her hopeful words were immediately shadowed by the grim reality that, just like on Earth, unforeseen tragedies exist here as well. The story turned to a dark silhouette against a stark, ominous background, introducing Marie Dunaref as an abyss of despair whose fated, tragic tale was about to unfold. With her eyes obscured by an ominous shadow and a malevolent smile gracing her lips, the truth was finally laid bare. Arisha Aiden had been the final boss of the first chapter all along. A loud announcement cut through the shuffling of feet on metal steps, instructing everyone to take a potato and a sweet potato before leaving. As the train began to pull away from the station, Marie Dunaref waved enthusiastically, calling out a cheerful farewell and promising to see them all again later. Stepping into the vast, multi-level common building of Merkava Academy, Corin Lok found himself enveloped by its opulent grandeur and the distant murmur of student activity. With a powerful rush of air, Corin Lok's attention was drawn upward to a colossal magic circle glowing with purple energy, recognizing that the space expansion spell was about to manifest. In the heart of a bewildered crowd, Corin Lok suddenly ignited with a mysterious, blinding aura, sparking confused murmurs as onlookers questioned what was happening right before their eyes. The blinding aura subsided to reveal a dark void where the others now floated in chaos, prompting Corin to calmly scold the helpless rookies, questioning how students of Merkava Academy could be so alarmed by such a trivial spell. With the unmistakable shouts of Old Man Harmon echoing in the distance, Corin Lok dismissively scratched his ear, already tired of the man's relentless, military-like routine. The history of this world was forged in an endless war against demons, a conflict where humanity's greatest champions were those who could command the immense power of auras and magic. In a vast, dark space illuminated only by a golden floor, a glowing silhouette emerged, offering a confident greeting to an unseen guest. The entrance ceremony commenced with the arrival of a flamboyant figure who introduced himself as Professor Fairmont Daman, the man overseeing the day's events. Corin Lok revealed a fanged, predatory smirk as he addressed the new academy entrants, acknowledging that they all possessed the required certificates and the ambition to become knights or mages. The tense atmosphere was shattered by the arrival of Jaeger Hinspader, his disdainful expression barely concealed by sunglasses as he voiced his contempt for the posers around him and demanded they prove what they were really made of. Within a vast blue-hued darkness, a series of brilliant flashes suddenly erupted, momentarily revealing the stoic figures of Korin, Jaeger, Arisha, and Lark standing in silent anticipation. In the silent hum of the system's evaluation, a stark interface revealed Korin Lok's shockingly low potential, confirming a disappointing truth he had already resigned himself to. A holographic display of Korin Lok's stats materialized before him, casting a faint glow that did little to hide his exasperated expression as he admitted how truly sad the numbers were. On a dimly lit platform, the enigmatic instructor Jaeger Hinspeter began the assessment, explaining that the glowing panels before them represented their total evaluation rank. Following Jaeger's instruction to find their ranks, Korin quickly calculated that among the 400 students, his glowing signboard placed him firmly in the bottom 1%. As an ominous glint reflected off his sunglasses, Lark Bergman offered a chilling wish of good luck to his opponent. Immediately following his wish, a torrent of glowing souls shot through the ethereal void, hurtling towards a sequence of numbered cards that materialized in their path. As a new class of students gathered within a glowing blue aura, an unseen observer thoughtfully noted the promising number of gems among them this year. An authoritative instructor then stepped forward, announcing to the assembly that the first and second-tier students were to be held aside, as their assessment would come only after the others had been tested. The story's second act commenced, heralded by a luminous, arcane symbol that glowed softly in the darkness. From this new beginning emerged four pivotal figures: Arisha Aiden, granddaughter of a Grand Swordmaster, Uel, a druid of Adalorn Forest, Duran Worski, a mercenary of Agam, and Krana Ludun, the Golemaster. Within a swirling crimson aura, a mysterious figure in a nun's habit was revealed, her imposing presence defined by the glowing number 1 above her head and the declaration that she was the only first-tier student among the freshmen. Amidst an explosion of crimson power, a dark-haired woman with glowing red eyes was revealed, her fearsome presence heralded by the dreaded title of the soaring fiend, Huaran. A disgruntled Marie Denaref stewed in her disbelief, unable to comprehend what the director had been thinking when he accepted that girl into the academy. With a look of utter disdain, the distinguished Jaeger Hinspeter held his chin and mused aloud that assessing the 6th tiers was pointless, as even the 5th-tier candidates were a dismal and useless lot who should be dismissed outright. Against a fiery backdrop of intense pressure, a menacing woman loomed over a terrified subordinate, coldly stating that any complaints about the director's policy on equal education should be taken directly to him, a challenge that silenced the man's stammered objections. With a decisive air, the formally dressed Jaeger Hinspeter announced he was starting the assessment, his declaration punctuated by a sharp snap of his fingers that sent a burst of energy through the air. In a moment charged with anticipation, a large, sword-emblazoned case fell from the sky, and Korin Lok watched it land before him, realizing with a jolt of surprise that it was a weapons case. Within a vast, empty void, a sudden announcement broke the silence, informing the participants that a test was about to begin. In just 30 seconds, they would be swarmed by increasingly powerful demonic beasts. Unmoved by the impending swarm, Korin Lok simply looked down, observing with disdain that the other participants were just as curt as ever. As the countdown neared its end, Korin Lok watched with a confident smirk, mentally calculating how the 5th and 6th tier students would likely fare under the immense pressure of the time limit. Driven by pure, unthinking instinct, Korin Loq's hand plunged into a pile of weapons, desperately searching for the familiar feel of a sword hilt. As uncertainty filled the air, one of the companions spoke with complete conviction, revealing that he knew the correct item because it was the same one he had acquired in the previous rank test. An ominous countdown began to echo through the digital void, heralding the manifestation of 3 ethereal, wolf-like creatures forged from crackling blue energy. As the snarling jaws of a 5th-tier demonic beast lunged forward, Korin swiftly dodged, his mind consumed by the old saying about the 10,000 days required to truly master a sword. In the blinding light of a powerful explosion, Korin Loq's mind cut through the chaos, seizing upon the single realization that a spear was his best choice. In a blinding flash of cataclysmic energy, a monstrous shadow wolf was caught completely off guard, letting out a questioning growl as its very form began to crumble away. As bright beams of light descended from the heavens, Korin Lok stood confidently with one arm raised, offering a casual apology for the overwhelming power he was about to unleash. With a guttural roar that ripped through the silence, a pair of ferocious wolf-like beasts lunged forward, one of them instantly unleashing a searing beam of crimson energy from its gaping maw. With the sound of unseen forces cracking and crunching behind him, Korin Lok stood perfectly still, his voice cutting through the chaos to state that he happened to possess a particular advantage. With eyes glowing a menacing red, Korin Lok flashed a sharp-toothed grin and assured his opponents that he had plenty of experience dealing with their kind. With his boot planted firmly upon the defeated, spiky mass, Korin Lok pulled his spear free and calmly mused that the entire fight had taken a mere 12 seconds. Clutching his spear as violet energy coiled around his feet, Korin Lok remembered being eliminated by these very hounds in the past, vowing that this time would be different. With a triumphant smirk, Korenlok slung his staff over his shoulder, vowing to defeat every opponent up to the highest tier before demanding the next wave of challengers enter. After a brief pause, Korenlok found himself standing alone in a vast, silent expanse of blue, his spear held ready as he braced for what was to come. A bead of sweat trickled down Korenlok's temple as he stared in frustrated disbelief, wondering why nothing was emerging and if the system had somehow failed him. From a safe vantage point, Koren observed the desperate struggles against monstrous beasts through a series of circular portals, scoffing inwardly as he recalled defeating such fifth-tier creatures in just over a minute when he was their age. As the powerful Korenlok scoffed at the weakness of the fifth-tier challenges, his arrogant dismissal was cut short by a sudden, brilliant blue flare from the mysterious orb beneath him. Suspended within a glowing blue void, Korenlok's quiet yawn was abruptly interrupted by a system interface proclaiming him 6th tier, a notification so strange he could only dismiss it as a bug. As the energy of the fight subsided, Korenlok's anticipation soured into confusion, wondering why the next tier of monsters had failed to appear as 3 familiar glowing spirits suddenly materialized before him once more. In an ominous space lit only by the ethereal glow of blue orbs, the powerful Jaeger Hinspeter stood with his back turned, callously branding the desperate cries of unseen souls as the pleas of pathetic fools. Amidst the sharp cries of his target, Korenlok arced through the air in a dazzling display of force, a blur of motion and crackling energy. That dazzling display of force immediately drew the attention of an evaluator, Lark Birdman, who announced the competition's first victor while clicking his tongue in disapproval at the 7-minute and 20-second completion time. Gazing intently at the glowing blue energy sphere, the analyst Lark Birdman mentally calculated how long the third tiers would have taken, only for his train of thought to shatter in sudden bewilderment. The source of his bewilderment was the sight of Korenlok floating unresponsive in the air, prompting a frantic official to shout that the device must be broken as it repeatedly failed to summon any demonic beasts. In the tense atmosphere of the Academy's examination, a flustered official named Lark Birdman gestured wildly, declaring to his companion that it was impossible for Lady Josephine's flawless 20-year record to be broken, pointing out that the student remained idle as the expected demonic beasts failed to materialize. In an office thick with tension, the authoritative Lark Birdman pressed a visibly anxious Jaeger Hinspeter, demanding to know if he'd personally witnessed the error, and cutting through his stammered excuses to conclude that he hadn't. Flustered and insistent that the system was bugged, Korenlok could only watch in exasperation as the same 3 glowing, wolf-like monsters materialized before him once more. Overwhelmed by the relentless ordeal, Korenlok's frustration finally erupted as he roared out his indignation, questioning whether he was being treated like some kind of dog they were training. 2 thunderous blasts erupted from the gaping maw of a monstrous, dog-like creature, the entire violent sequence over in just 7.3 seconds. Clutching a glowing orb that blazed with the impossible time of 740 seconds, a stunned Marie Daenerys stammered in disbelief, wondering aloud how it could be possible as Jaeger Hinspeter stood frozen in shock beside her. In a vast chamber bathed in an ethereal blue light, 2 figures hurried to catch up with a third, their urgent call to Professor Fermack prompting him to turn and casually ask what was wrong. Prompted to identify the fastest student, a man in sunglasses thoughtfully reported that a student named Jaeger had completed the test in about 3.5 minutes, then wondered aloud why his companion was asking. In a moment of charged silence, the white-haired Lark Birdman began to speak, his apprehensive eyes glancing away as he quickly dismissed the thought. Impressed by his opponent's skill with a spear and musing that he might be a huntsman's son, Korenlok decided to escalate the challenge by summoning a fearsome 4th-tier demonic beast, the Mad Boar. With a final screech and a resounding thud, the wild boar collapsed in a mere 3.7 seconds, leaving the distinguished Lark Birdman to stare in utter disbelief. But his triumph was fleeting, as a monstrous 3rd-tier owlbear materialized with a deafening roar, forcing him to acknowledge that this next one would not be so easy. With a thunderous roar, a massive, furry white beast swiped its claws through the air, forcing Korenlok into a desperate dodge. Seizing the opening after his desperate dodge, he countered the swipe with a single, focused punch that landed with a bone-shattering crunch. The battle ignited with the ferocious roar of a monstrous, owl-like creature, its massive wing cutting through the air as Korenlok deftly leaped away from the powerful strike. With a blaze of fiery energy erupting from his sword, a determined Korenlok gripped the hilt and invoked the power of Kenaz. In a blinding eruption of crimson flame, a monstrous figure roared into existence, its voice a torrent of raw power questioning the very blaze it had become. The typically composed Jaeger Hinspeter's expression of intense focus shattered into one of pure shock as his mind reeled, questioning if he was truly witnessing the legendary power of rune magic. Amid a screech and a rush of searing heat, Korenlok deftly hopped away from a fiery avian assault, his analytical mind already concluding that the target had sustained little to no damage. The momentary calm shattered as a searing blue attack cut through the air, But Jäger Hinspeter reacted in a flash, his bladed wings whirling to life as he dashed aside. Descending from the sky with a glinting spear, Korin realized his entire strategy hinged on a single, crucial action, blocking his opponent's visibility. As the assessment continued, a bead of sweat ran down Jäger Hinspeter's temple, his focused expression belying a stunning realization that this kid was no 6th tier, leaving him to desperately wish the test could measure beyond its current limits to witness such power. From a high vantage point, two elderly men watched an unseen event unfold, one's mind alight with anticipation for a new fighter's battle against a demonic spirit, while the other nervously fumbled with his announcement. In the stark emptiness of the testing chamber, Korin Lok stood poised as an announcement declared the start of the 5th-tier demonic spirit test, prompting a glowing, powerful entity to materialize from the ground beneath him. In the tense silence, the red-eyed sorcerer Korin Lok clutched his staff, convinced a summoning had taken place even though he could neither see nor hear a single trace of it. The world of systems and spirits suddenly grew silent for him as a glowing blue interface confirmed a crippling restraint. He could no longer perceive or interact with any spiritual being. In a moment of quiet contemplation, a daring theory formed in Korin Lok's mind, leading him to conclude that demonic spirits shouldn't be able to interact with him and that it was time to put this hypothesis to the test. With his back turned, Korin Lok began a methodical count, each number materializing in the air as his staff thrummed with gathering power. With his preparations confirmed and everything proceeding just as he had foreseen, a smug, triumphant grin spread across Korin Lok's face. That triumphant expression hardened into resolve as he dramatically gripped a bar overhead and announced that he, Korin Lok, was officially forfeiting the assessment. The assessment for student number 19, Korin Lok, concluded as his results flashed across a screen, revealing a stunning series of new records against demonic beasts that stood in stark contrast to his disqualification in every demonic spirit test. After a grueling trial, the world faded to a silent, black void, where stark white letters materialized to announce the total evaluation score. In the wake of a surprising victory, the newly recognized 5th-tier knight, Korin Lok, offered a deep bow of gratitude, his relief immediately shifting to stunned disbelief as he questioned if the assessment had truly been forfeited. Stunned by the overwhelming power on display, the veteran agent Jäger Hinspeter stared in utter disbelief, his mind reeling as he tried to fathom the identity of the mysterious child responsible. A rising murmur of chatter filled the vast, ornate hall where a crowd of faintly glowing people gathered under large-numbered signs, the air thick with anticipation. Amid the buzz of post-assessment results, Lark Bergman groaned over his 4th-tier placement while Jäger Hinspeter bragged about his 3rd, their focus quickly shifting to the quiet Korin Lok as they asked in disbelief if he had actually managed to take down an owlbear and a banshee. A smug laugh announced the presence of Jäger Hinspeter, a powerfully built man whose tattooed arms and bandaged cheek did little to diminish his confident air. A sudden spark of recognition lit up Jäger Hinspeter's face as he explained to a watchful Korin Lok and Lark Bergman that he knew the man before them as an early-game character designed to pick a fight with the player. In a shocking burst of violence against a stark red canvas, the resolute Korin Lok lunged from behind, plunging his blade deep into the unsuspecting Jäger Hinspeter. Lost in troubled thought, Korin Lok replayed the memory of Sihu killing Jäger, acknowledging the boy's youthful arrogance but concluding that the fatal response had been nothing short of insane. Standing amongst a crowd of his peers, Korin Lok flinched as cruel, unseen voices openly mocked the 5th tiers, expressing disbelief that anyone could be weak enough to lose to mere short hounds and ghosts. Clenching his fist, Korin's thoughts drifted to a bitter memory of Lark Bergman who, consumed by jealousy, had spread malicious rumors about him and Sihu, ultimately leading him to suffer the same grim fate as Jäger. The formal address began as Korin Lok stepped before the microphone, clearing his throat to offer a composed morning greeting to everyone present. Before a sea of new faces, the illuminated figure of board director Ariu Kasar formally welcomed them to the academy, an institution he explained was designed for the strong to become even stronger. Bound in chains, the stoic nun Marie Deneref and the pensive Arisha Aden stood in a solemn assembly, listening as a voice foretold that while some were already powerful, a long and arduous journey awaited the rest. Standing within the Academy's formal halls, Korin Lok and Jäger Hinspeter listened as the official, Lark Bergman, explained that while the school could only guide their first steps, the rest of their journey would be entirely up to them. Holding the microphone with composed grace, the enigmatic Arisha Aden concluded her formal address with a serene smile, announcing that would be all and wishing everyone a wonderful day. A vast, multi-level hall buzzed with the silent anticipation of countless silhouetted figures, all converging around the brightly numbered stations that marked the start of a momentous event. Jäger Hinspeter proudly declared his promotion to 3rd-tier knight, but his boastful speech was cut short as he suddenly noticed something that left him confused. The tense quiet of the hall was shattered as the imposing Jäger-Hinspater loomed over a startled Koren Lok, aggressively demanding his rank, prompting the timid student to stammer out that he was only in the 5th tier. Laughter filled the room as the muscular Jäger-Hinspater relentlessly mocked Lark Bergman for his lousy 5th-place score, tauntingly asking if he'd actually lost to a ghost, all under the silent gaze of Koren Lok. Breaking the quiet moment, a cheerful Koren Lok slung his arm around the startled Jäger-Hinspater's shoulders. His friendly greeting met with the larger man's confused demand to know who he was. Leaning in for a closer look, Orisha Aiden pointed to the back of Koren Lok's neck, marveling at the flawless quality of his tattoos and correctly identifying the one there as a practical marker for his blood type in an emergency. A confident grin spread across Jäger-Hinspater's face as he proudly revealed the origin of his ink, explaining that his tattooist mother, a linework specialist, had done his in an old-school style at his specific request. Standing confidently within a grand hall, Koren Lok praised the artist's obvious talent, a fact he already knew, and then casually inquired if she had any other tattoos. As his mind raced for an explanation, the answer emerged from the depths of a past life, a memory streaking like fractured light centered on the time when Jäger had gone missing. As Koren Lok strode through the Academy's grand, echoing halls, a significant turn of events was set in motion by the sudden news of his mother's arrival. In a moment heavy with unspoken history, the truth emerged that Jäger's tattoos were not for show but a testament to his parents' love, a revelation that stunned him and brought Marie to tears as Koren quietly observed the emotional scene unfold. With a proud grin, Lark Bergman flexed his bicep to reveal a prominent tattoo, enthusiastically explaining that the flying chariot emblazoned on his arm was the incredible symbol of Merkava Academy. The encounter began as Koren Lok offered his name, prompting a powerfully built, tattooed man to flex and confidently declare himself as Jäger-Hinspater. The quiet was shattered as Koren Lok, a studious young man with glasses, flinched back in terror, stammering Lark's name in a choked whisper. From a distance, Orisha Aiden watched as the sound of Lark and Koren's boisterous laughter echoed across the open space, joined by Jäger's softer, seated chuckle. In the quiet aftermath, Marie Denerev offered a gentle, appreciative smile, remarking on how incredibly smooth and impressive the save had been. While they waited, Koren Lok, a kind-hearted man with his dark hair tied back, offered a subtle, optimistic smile, certain that the person they were discussing must be a really good guy. That smile then faded into a pensive expression as he clutched a book to his chest, considering the good impression he must have made on Lark and recalling the man's special trait was memorize. Bathed in a sinister red glow, Koren Lok's shark-toothed grin stretched across his face as he reveled in the acquisition of a free skill book. The Academy itself operated on a similar principle, with most of its grand facilities standing open to all students for free. While the Academy provided practical benefits like free dorms and an inexpensive cafeteria, its true crown jewel was revealed to be the immense and modern training room. The choice had been a simple one, as Koren Lok now moved with impossible speed through the training room, a space where any exercise, no matter how demanding, was within his reach. In the training grounds, Koren unleashed a flurry of strikes against unseen spiritual beings, a newfound perception he was still testing when his strange, solitary combat caught the eye of Jäger, who pointed out the remarkable first year practicing against spirits. Surrounded by a stunned crowd, Orisha Aiden listened to whispers of disbelief claiming a first year was using an advanced spirit fighting technique that even second years struggled to master. In the midst of a brutal confrontation, Koren Lok cried out as a powerful, unseen blow sent him reeling, his attacker snickering that a mere first year never stood a chance. In the aftermath of a strenuous effort, a wounded Koren Lok leaned on his staff, his exhausted self-reflection shattered by an unexpected voice from behind asking if he was a freshman. The sound of determined footsteps filled the academy hallway as instructor Jäger-Hinspater confronted his student Koren Lok, inquiring why he was fighting spirits, to which the young man earnestly explained it was to practice his spear technique. Standing before an imposing, white-haired challenger, the young spear wielder Koren Lok met the question of his victory with an unwavering vow to win, no matter the cost. Sweat beaded on Koren Lok's brow as his mind raced, desperately trying to understand the sudden appearance of an unexpected figure, and fearing he had made a critical mistake during his entrance exam. In a moment of quiet contemplation, the white-haired Jäger-Hinspater let out a low hum, his brow furrowing as he processed the situation. Beaming with approval at their fine spirit, a cheerful, white-haired man named Jäger-Hinspater enthusiastically presented a stack of 10 meal tickets as a reward. Jäger-Hinspater's booming laughter filled the air as he told a confident Koren Lok, who stood holding a spear and his winnings, to inform him of his victory so he could be the first to offer congratulations. But his amusement suddenly caught in his throat. A faint smile touched Koren Lok's lips as his tension finally broke. He had been nervous for nothing, remembering that this display of appreciation for food was undoubtedly a good sign. With a confident smirk, the blue-haired Orisha Aiden, clad in a dark sailor uniform, declared it was time for another round and mockingly told her opponent to smile. With a determined shout, Korin Lok met a furious onslaught of red-streaked attacks, his glowing blue energy crackling as it deflected each blow with a resounding clang. Fueled by a furious determination, Korin's fist, wreathed in glowing blue energy, slammed directly into his opponent's torso. In a flash of violent force, Korin Lok was sent flying backwards, a pained shout escaping his lips as the heavy staff was knocked from his hands. The first moment of respite found Korin Lok on his back, sweat clinging to his skin as a long, weary sigh shuddered through him. The struggle began with a heavy plop as an unseen force slammed Korin Lok down, his head tilting back in distress as sweat streamed down his face. Kneeling beside the utterly exhausted form of Korin Lok, a concerned Marie Denerev offered a glass of water, remarking that he looked tired, an observation he could only wearily confirm, as a pair of slender hands made the water in a glass rise and swirl with unnatural ease. An insidious voice whispered a tempting suggestion to take a break, reasoning that surely enough effort had already been made. In the quiet aftermath of a draining trial, a spent Korin Lok lay on the floor as Arisha Aiden leaned over him, offering a comforting cloth and reassuring him that with time and future opportunities, he would undoubtedly improve. Haunted by the memory of a chance as fragile as a falling glass, Korin Lok resigned himself to the fact that there was no next time for him, only a past that could have been different 3 years ago. His thoughts drifted back to a sun-drenched, rocky peak, recalling a time when Sihu was by his side and they could access the main player's system window, complete with its powerful potions and skill books. Alone in a dimly lit room, Korin Lok steeled himself with a grim resolve, accepting that as the one responsible for Sihu Park's death, he must now face everything on his own. Declining the offered drink with a polite but firm resolve, the blue-haired Arisha Aiden explained that she couldn't give up until she had tried her very best, choosing instead to raise the stakes. Bruised but resolute from his training, Korin Lok tightened his grip on the wooden staff, panting as he resolved that he desperately needed to become stronger. The test began in a blinding explosion of blue energy as Korin Lok, spear in hand, resolved to discover the true limits of his former abilities, no matter how foolish the attempt might be. Amidst the heat of battle, Korin Lok exploded into a blur of motion, unleashing his lethal technique, the poisonous snake thrust. The tide of the intense duel shifted as Korin Loku, with focused determination, grabbed Jaeger Hinsbitter's leg to unleash the powerful Tiger Wind technique. Capitalizing on his hold, he immediately unleashed a brutal counterattack known as the revolving yank plunge. As if to shatter the very heavens, a spiraling projectile manifested, a mountain-destroying force unleashed upon the world below. Burdened by the past, Korin Lok let out a deep sigh, reflecting on his own powerlessness, a lack of physical strength, mana, or aura, and how even his knowledge of the future had crumbled before overwhelming genius and monstrous might. As his hands clenched the metallic handle with overwhelming force, Korin Lok recalled his past, remembering that to survive against those powerful creatures, he had to work harder than anyone. A torrent of red energy erupted around Korin Lok as, confident that 3 years of training would not betray him, he unleashed the devastating ultimate poisonous snake technique with his staff. The air itself seemed to ignite as Korin Lok, his face set with fierce determination, unleashed a punch that erupted in a brilliant explosion of red and gold energy. The silence was shattered by a brilliant arc of blue light as a glowing weapon carved through the air with incredible force. As the battle took a stunning turn, Arisha Aden watched with concerned eyes, wondering if he had truly thrown away his spear and was giving up. In a blinding flash of power, the critical moment arrived as Korin Lok's hand closed around the sharp, humming artifact, his grasp met with a jolt of pure shock. A sudden, horrifying clarity washed over Arisha Aden, her golden eye widening as she realized he had let his spear fly on purpose. Wreathed in a fiery aura above a spectral blue wolf, Korin Lok arced through the air, declaring that he had released his spear only to reclaim it at precisely the right moment. As crackling energy coiled around his blade, Korin Lok finally unleashed his ultimate art, the poisonous snake technique's devastating snake's deceit. The world was suddenly torn apart by a deafening boom as a colossal sphere of brilliant blue energy erupted overhead, its raw power captivating Arisha Aden from below. As the energy coalesced around her, she became a radiant beacon of power, a sight so incredible that for an onlooker named Marie, any word of praise felt like a profound understatement. As an unseen spectacle unfolded before her, a profound sense of wonder filled Arisha Aden, her wide golden eye reflecting the brilliant light as a gasp of awe escaped her. In a dazzling explosion of cerulean light, Korin Lok hung suspended in the air with his spear, an awesome display of power that left his companions utterly captivated. A sudden, violent crash shattered the air as Korin plummeted from above, spear in hand, his impactful landing drawing a startled cry from Arisha, who called out for the first year. The force of his landing left him sprawled and twitching amongst the shattered spears, from where he groaned, asking if she was all right and admitting that he might have overdone it. A shattered spear lay in 2 pieces on the wooden floor, a stark reflection of Korenlok's frustrating realization that some feats were simply impossible for his current body. Morning broke on a new day, casting its light upon the imposing classical architecture of a grand and unfamiliar building. The first day at the academy began with a vibrant welcome from a cheerful upperclassman who eagerly announced that she would be their guide to the school's facilities. As their guide proudly gestured towards one of the school's main attractions, a bandaged Koren took a thoughtful bite of food, concluding that his first step to becoming a better fighter was to forge a stronger body. Surrounded by the clamor of the grand hall, Korenlok's focus narrowed with a sudden, unshakable resolve as he decided there was only one way to truly improve his physical abilities without Sihu's elixirs. Looking down with quiet intensity, he called upon his runes of troth, vowing that he would never again turn a blind eye to the misfortune of good people. In the hushed opulence of a grand hall, a studious Lark Bergman stood absorbed in contemplation, the open pages of a teal book reflecting in his glasses. A moment of quiet focus was shattered as Korenlok playfully draped his arm over Arisha Aiden's shoulder, his sudden invitation to lunch catching the bandaged, bookish student completely off guard. The tense silence between them shattered as Korenlok leaned in close, a sly smirk on his face as he whispered to the wide-eyed Arisha Aiden that they had much to discuss, starting with the grimoire. The grimoire itself was a lavishly decorated, ancient tome glowing with golden light, which, in its simplest form, was a skill book. The story began in the legendary library of Merkava Academy, a sprawling sanctuary built to preserve all of humanity's knowledge, and rumored to house a powerful item that could grant spells to anyone who simply read its words. Deep within a library built entirely on a lie, Koren Loq frantically searched the towering shelves, knowing this place existed for the sole purpose of hiding a powerful grimoire. Amidst the towering shelves of a vast library, a smug Korenlok explained his strategy by claiming the best place to hide a tree is in a forest, earning a reluctant agreement from Jaeger Hinspeter, who insisted he had better keep his promise. His sly smile unwavering, Koren watched Lark Bergman diligently scour the shelves, reaffirming that he would honor his conditions by only taking a grimoire with special traits while musing on the man's hardworking, nerdy character. In the past, Korenlok's unique trait Memorize allowed him to fill his spellbook with a vast library of magic, yet the sheer number of spells he stored made them nearly impossible to utilize effectively. Watching the tomes float before him, he confronted the harsh reality that if a mage's abilities and mana rank were low, no amount of theoretical knowledge could ever promise results. A hand rested upon a mysterious grimoire titled Sack of All Trades. As a voice explained, this was the only way, before slowly intoning the words meant to awaken its power. A heavy book suddenly crashed to the floor with a startling thud, silencing Koren's frustrated demand that his companion stop goofing around. With a triumphant flourish from Korenlok, a section of the stone wall rumbled aside to reveal a hidden doorway, prompting a shocked Marie Denerev to demand how he ever managed to find it. Ignoring her question entirely, Korenlok eagerly stepped through the doorway and declared they should go inside, leaving a flustered Marie to call out for him to wait. His eagerness quickly faded inside the narrow, unsettling passage, where he nervously muttered about how creepy it was, then paused to call out Lark's name, earning a confused sound in response. The air crackled with sudden tension as Jaeger Hinspeter, his gaze intense, extended a bandaged hand toward the startled Korenlok, declaring it was time for him to keep his promise. As Jaeger's hand clamped onto his wrist, a startled Koren quickly confirmed that he understood the promise was to help him deal with an evil spirit. The air crackled with tension as Koren began to question what he was supposed to do, his words abruptly silenced by a savage punch from a grinning, sharp-toothed assailant. Bathed in an ominous crimson aura, Korenlok loomed over the terrified Arisha Aden, his eyes glowing as he chuckled darkly, declaring that now they could finally begin.